Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Label Summit. My name is Nikki, and I am your host. I'm going to show you how to step into your own power, free yourself from expectations, and live the life you always wanted. Today's special guest is Dr. Lucia Capacchione. Dr. Capacchione is an art therapist and best-selling author of Recovery of Your Inner Child and 22 other books. She was an early pioneer in the journal therapy, inner child work, and expressive arts therapy in the 1970s. During her extensive career, she has originated unique approaches to well-being and creativity. Her Creative Journal Expressive Arts, CJEA, training certifies professionals internationally to apply her methods in mental health care, addiction treatment, body-mind healing, education, life, career coaching, creativity, spiritual guidance, education, and more. I'm so excited to have you here, Dr. Capacchione. Can you share a little bit more about yourself and your journey of how you got where you are today?
It's been an interesting journey because I started in the field of art. I studied with a woman who at the time was called Sister Mary Carita. She's now known as Carita Kent, and there's a whole renaissance of interest in her work. She was a political activist and did political activist art, which is very relevant right now. She did a lot of, anti-Vietnam War posters and that sort of thing. And so I'm very blessed to have had that background. And I worked as a designer. I had a popular line of posters in the 60s and 70s. And then because I had two children, I got interested in education. So I took training in the Montessori method and became a Montessori Head Start director right after the Watts riots. Again, very relevant. What is exactly going on in the streets right now was going on then. And I was very interested in taking the Montessori method out of the affluent suburbs and into the inner city. And I had an incredible opportunity to do that. So I brought a lot of art into that because I knew intuitively, and I knew from my studies, that children respond to art. And they did. They were traumatized children. They had had traumatic experiences with the riots that had happened in the summer of '65 in August, just around this time. And so I was able to go in and help with 300 children in our program. And that was a very exciting time for me. It was a lot of hard work, but it was worth every minute of it. That really prepared me for art therapy, even though the Art Therapy Association wasn't formed until 1969. And but I observed how therapeutic art was for these children. They would come right into the art area and start working with the clay and paint. And then once they got all their feelings out, they could start learning. And our children really learned. It was amazing to see. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Wow.
We were in Compton and Watts, East LA, so Latinx population, Black population, and a lot of poverty and a lot of trauma. So that kind of got me ready for my own trauma. I went through a divorce, and I witnessed my parents' marriage disintegrate after 35 years, and my business partnership with my husband fell apart. So everything fell apart at once. And about 3 or 4 years into that, I fell apart. My body just collapsed. And that's how I discovered my work. I was sitting in bed and I started keeping a journal. I actually really morphed my sketchbooks into personal journals where I just poured out my feelings, my dreams at night, all the stuff that had happened to me. I just poured it all out in the journal. And the artwork was nothing like anything I'd ever done. It was very surreal and a lot of scribbling. It looked like a child's art. And of course, that freaked me out because I had a degree in art. And I had worked for the famous Charles Eames. And, I was a big deal in art. And here I am drawing like a preschooler. And it was kind of frightening, a little disorienting. But eventually it brought me into my life's work, which is art therapy, expressive arts, and of course I was one of the pioneers of journal therapy.
I want to get into that actually because it's so interesting to me. for my own personal journey, I did experience a lot of rigidity around my life. And through my childhood, I was always kind of told to live a certain way. And because I followed that rigid lifestyle, I lost my creativity. Like I used to, when I was younger, I drew endlessly. I would spend the afternoons drawing, and I would paint, and I would make things. But as I grew up, I kind of forgot how to do those things. And I think it really translated in my outward expression in my lifestyle, because I lost creativity and imagination to apply to different aspects of my life. So I really want to know, like on your end, what are some things that you do with your clients, and what's the, I guess, the psychology behind the art therapy that you do?
Well, it's interesting. Your story is very common, Nikki. I mean, I hear this all the time from clients, from workshop attendees, from people coming into my training program to be certified to teach this work. It is a very common story. What happens is we lose our creativity when we go to school, generally speaking, unless we go to a very unusual school that values the arts. We just don't value that in our society and in our schools. The arts are the first thing to go out of the budget. And so we lose not only our innate artistic and creative abilities in all the arts, but we lose our contact with our inner child, which is absolutely interwoven. You cannot separate creativity from the inner child, because the inner child is our physical self, it's our emotional expressive self, it's also the root of our creative self. You cannot have creativity without an inner child being present. That's that spontaneity, curiosity, just passion for life, excitement. If you watch children, that's how they are, naturally, normally. And then the spirituality piece is part of the inner child. Not dogma, not any left-brain teachings about the spirit, but the experience of spirituality, that there is something greater than us. Like really marveling at a beautiful sunset. That's the inner child just being really excited about something greater that we see it usually in nature or any place, in relationships, whatever it is. Yeah. So all of those four aspects of the inner child come into our creativity. If we're not in our body, we're not going to be able to be creative.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, can't do it. And if we're not coming from our emotional self, we're not going to be creative.
I want to know, like, how that personally affected you when you were going through that, because I know you were experiencing the trauma of the divorce and also your physical sickness. What were some things that you were doing at that time and what were some of the releases that you experienced?
Well, the trauma of all of that somatized eventually. My body just finally broke down and I couldn't function. And I didn't know what I had. I went to the doctors and the first doctor gave me antibiotics for a virus, and that's ridiculous because antibiotics have nothing to do with a virus. Okay. So other doctors later on down the line told me that was a mistake right off the bat. And then I had all the side effects you can imagine that are in the physician's desk reports for antibiotics. I had every infection in every part of the body that is most commonly affected by antibiotics. Because antibiotics oftentimes are like killing ants with a machine gun. Yeah, it'll kill the ants, but it's going to kill everything else too. And so the side effects were horrible. So I had all these infections, and then I had anxiety about it because every time I'd go to the doctor, they'd send me to a specialist because now I had an infection here and there, and it was like a department store. So I was very confused and taking all these different medications, which I had never done before. I wasn't a medication person. So it got to be scary. It was like, these people don't know what they're doing, and they keep sending me for more of the same, and more of the same is not working. And I'm getting sicker. And now, not only am I sicker physically and less energy, but I'm in more pain, and I'm really having a lot of anxiety now. I would have anxiety and panic attacks. And it was really scary. It was terrifying. And I knew intuitively that if I kept down that road, I was going to die. I just knew it. And something happened that really helped me to really understand that. I got a call from the pharmacy, and they said, at the HMO that I belong to, and they said, oh, don't take that medicine we just gave you, because we got your prescription mixed up with somebody else's.
Oh my goodness.
And that did it. They said, oh, come back and get your medication. And I said, no, I won't be coming back. So I never went back to the HMO. I never went back to the pharmacy. I went in the bathroom and I did something really, really risky. I took all the medications out of the medicine chest. I popped the lids and I threw them all in the trash one at a time so I wouldn't be tempted to take them. Just trashed them all. And I remember standing over that trash container and going, okay, this isn't working. I know that. I don't know what is going to work, but this isn't it. So I'm going to get rid of this temptation to even continue with this path. And I was very angry at this point because of what the pharmacy had told me. You know, it was like one more slip up, one more mistake, one more, error on their part, misjudgment, whatever. And I just said, no, that's it. And I was trained, like so many people, to really follow the guidelines of doctors. They were like deities in my mind. To even question them was a big process for me. This is 1973. And the whole field of holistic and alternative medicine hadn't really blossomed yet. So I'm out on the cutting edge here, making a decision for myself and following my own gut, my own intuition, and my own body. And that was a big deal. Now, I had been involved in the civil rights movement and the women's movement, so I was an independent thinker. But when it came to the body and doctors, and I was like, this was really pushing it. So, but I pushed it. I went back to bed, and I looked over at I had a little nightstand, and my journal was sitting there with the pens that I had started keeping. And I just asked myself a simple question: what has made me feel better during this summer of being ill? And I looked at that journal and I go, that's made me feel better. I'm going to continue doing that. Okay. And that's what I did. And that saved my life. I kept drawing my feelings out. I kept having dialogues with my inner self, with my body. I mean, all the stuff that I discovered, really the basics of it, I discovered that summer. I also went into therapy in the fall, in October. And by Christmas time, I was functioning again, without medication.
That's incredible. That's incredible because I don't think a lot of people realize this, but to be able to do what you love to do and to be able to live a full life is just making sure that you yourself are taken care of and your body is taken care of. So when we start limiting our minds and letting traumatic experiences overtake us, then we start becoming sick. And I've noticed that for myself too. When you said anxiety shows up often, anxiety was huge for me. Mental health was a huge issue for me as well, where because I felt like I didn't have an outlet for expression. I felt like there was no other options for my life. Like I thought this was the only path and I was unhappy in this path, but yet I still followed this path. So part of coming out of and healing myself from these things was to just get paint and scribble. And I never actually understood abstract until this point in my life. I was like, why do people buy art that's just a whole thing, just like this, right?
Exactly. Well, and in fact, what you're talking about is exactly why I wrote these two books, Drawing Your Stress Away and Hello, This Is Your Body Talking. These are my most recent books, but they encapsulate everything I've done in a very simple manner. So I always tell people, start with drawing your stress away and scribble. And I have exercises in here where I have a page that just has an emotion on the bottom of it. Name families of feelings, common emotions, happy, sad, angry, whatever. And fill that page with a scribble that really represents and expresses that feeling for you. What color is it? what shape is it, or what kind of lines does it have? What's the rhythm or the pattern that you associate, and not thinking about it, not planning it, but just letting it come out on paper. That's what I did to heal myself. And then, of course, in Hello, This Is Your Body Talking, I have a whole series of exercises where people actually draw an outline of the body and do their own x-ray. In an emotional sense, they're coloring in the areas where there's pain or discomfort, or even where they have negative thoughts about that body part. And then they do a dialogue with each body part. And they ask simple questions like, well, what are you? You know, well, I'm your headache, or I'm the pain in your back, or I'm your left arm, or whatever it is. And then, how do you feel? Well, I'm really angry, or I'm burning, okay, or I'm cold, or I'm numb, or whatever it is. And then why? And the body will tell you. The body will be the patient, and it will also be the healer, because it holds the wisdom of why those emotions got stuffed in the body. Emotions have only two places to go: out or in. There's no other option. And if they go out, they can go out in two ways, positive or negative. Anger can go out as an angry painting, or it can go out as, yelling at somebody or shooting somebody, right? Or if it stays in, it turns into things like cancer. It turns into all kinds of different illnesses in different parts of the body. And so, and I work with my clients. I mean, they come to me, a lot of them have cancer. They have very serious conditions. I've done cancer support groups. I've trained leaders of cancer support groups, and we've seen cancer turn around. One of my former students, who was a certified teacher, turned 4th stage lymphoma around in her 70s. That's usually a death sentence. Wow. She was at MD Anderson, the gold standard of cancer treatment, and they were really surprised. She absolutely turned it around, and her issue was self-judgment. It was eating her up, and it became cancer. And so it's toxic. The critic inside of her head is totally toxic. It will cause life-threatening illnesses, because the child is like taking all this toxicity of these mental thoughts that are so negative, and it's like holding it in, and it's just seething inside, and it turns into illness.
That's something I wanted to ask you too, is what are some of the common things that people experience that when they first come to you? So you said like self-judgment. What are some of the other underlying factors that can turn into illness, and how your art has healed these illnesses, these mental disabilities?
The big barrier is self-judgment. Yeah, that's it. And I've created a method for getting through that by having people, when I discovered that the non-dominant hand holds the key to much of this, as well as visual art and movement and all the other arts. But the non-dominant hand, when it comes to drawing and writing, is the key in my method, because the non-dominant hand taps directly into the right brain and into the limbic system where the emotions get stored. There is no direct pathway from the left linear logical left language centers of the brain and that whole area of the brain. There's no direct link into the limbic system where the emotions get stored. So talk therapy is very laborious. It takes a long time. And do you ever really get to the emotions? I don't think so. But if you do somatic therapies that work through the body or through the arts, you're going directly into the right brain. And in addition to that, the non-dominant hand that doesn't normally write is free to access the right brain, regardless of whether you're right or left-handed for writing. Doesn't matter. I'm the only person on the planet who's observed as many people as I have, either through letters I've gotten from readers, or actually observed people in workshops and trained people who have given me reports back on the planet of people drawing and writing with their non-dominant hand. And I'm here to tell you that it absolutely blasts through that critic, because what we do is we allow the critic to put on paper what it has to say, and then we answer back. We let the anger be the fuel in the tank for the angry child whose creativity has been squelched, to just blast through the critic and just say, you know, shut up, 4-letter words, just get out. And when that anger gets harnessed for good, it's amazing what it'll do. It'll just blast right through that critic. And the woman who had the 4th stage lymphoma wrote a book about it called Feeling the Shift, which she sells, you know, on Amazon. And it's an incredible book of her collages and her journaling and how she just told that critic off. And when she posted that particular entry where she really told the critic off, I felt it in my gut. And I wrote her an email. I said, you've just kicked cancer. I just know it. The next time she went for tests, there was no trace of cancer in her tests.
That's incredible. And I know this leads directly into like, once people are able to kind of break free from this containment of illness and disability and not being able to do what they did as a child, you go straight into visioning. And sure. I want to know more about your work in visioning, because visioning, I think, ties hand in hand in creating the life that you do want to live after being contained so long and not having any options of like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what is my life even supposed to look like? And how do I even achieve that? It's
well,
like,
it's interesting because that's the motivation I had when I wrote that book. I had been working with clients for years and going to do inner child work, inner reparenting, bringing in a nurturing parent inside, a protective parent, so they could set boundaries. They could find out what the inner child needed through these dialogues, using the non-dominant hand to speak for the child, and also using the non-dominant hand to speak for higher spiritual wisdom. So these people would come in, a lot of them are trauma survivors, a lot of them had dealt with addictions, been in 12-step programs and all that stuff. A lot of adult children of alcoholics, okay? So they go through and they heal their inner child. And then they ask the question you did. It's like, well, now what? You know, that old stuff I was doing, that doesn't work for me anymore. It's like, I'm ready for something new. I want a different kind of relationship. I want a different kind of career. You know, I want everything different now. And now what do I do? So now I brought my whole background of design I applied it to people's lives. And this was very rewarding for me because I got to pick up so many pieces from my design. I mean, I worked for one of the greatest designers in the world, Charles Eames, furniture designer and filmmaker. That was my first job out of college. So I have been around the greats. I knew Buckminster Fuller personally. He was one of my mentors. And I studied the Montessori method, which is based on brilliant design of educational materials, just brilliant design. And so I thought, okay, what are the principles of design and how can we apply it to our lives? Because artists and designers are experts at turning thoughts into things in the material world. And I have been studying a lot of metaphysics and New Age stuff. And I looked at, you know, creative visualization and affirmations and all that. And I thought, that's all well and good, but it's very ephemeral. It's really out there. That's not the way artists and designers operate. We don't sit around writing affirmations and, you know, visualizing stuff. The minute we visualize it, we do something with it. We put it on paper. We make a model. We do something three-dimensional with it. When I worked at Walt Disney Imagineering, the designers and builders of the theme parks and Disney stores for 10 years. I was one of their creativity consultants and management trainers. And I would sit at lunch at Disney and I'd watch these guys. They'd get their napkin that they just wipe their mouth on, and they'd get a pen out and they'd draw something on it because they didn't want to lose the idea. They put it down immediately, no matter where it was. They'd probably, you know, do it on a wall if they had to. And I thought, yeah, these guys, this is right. These guys are making it physical right away. So what I came up with was taking the idea of a visual map with magazine photographs to get rid of that whole thing about, oh, I'm not an artist, I can't draw, I don't have any talent. Forget it, you don't need that. Just get some scissors and glue and some magazines and an art board, poster board, and you're good to go, right? You don't have to have any talent. So we get rid of that problem right away. Then they make the collage and they do their vision board. And then they deal with the obstacles, because all of the other methods that come from the metaphysical background are not grounded in design principles. You're always gonna, or psychological principles, whenever you want to do something new, the critic's going to come in. I can guarantee it. So those methods that talk about visualization and all that good stuff, it's like putting whipped cream on a can of worms, because yeah, you could have all these wonderful dreams, but if you've got psychological blocks, they're not going to happen, or they're not going to happen the way you wanted them to. So we've got to deal with the psychology of design as well. What are all the obstacles that are going to jump in? Well, the big one is the critic. Oh, you can't have that. Who do you think you are? Blah, 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 blah. You can't afford it. You're too old. You're too young. You're too this, you're too that. So you get shot down right away. But I teach people to use that magazine photo collage vision board as their map. And then I give them a whole book full of journal exercises to dialogue with the images, dialogue with the inner critic. What does the inner critic say about the collage? Write it all out in the second person, so you distance yourself from it. You don't want to identify with it. The minute you say, I'm too young, I'm too old, I can't, blah, blah, then you identify with the critic. No, 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 no. You've got to disidentify. So you write it down in the second person, and then you answer back. And the other thing I do in the Hello, This Is Your Body Talking book is I've added the exercise where you take that critic to court. You become the prosecutor. And you write it down on paper. And then for everything it says that's negative, then you put the truth next to it. I call it the truth-telling exercise. Like when I wrote my first book, The Creative Journal, I had a paralyzing writer's block. And I realized I wasn't writing. I was just kind of sitting there staring at, in those days, the typewriter. And I thought, this will never do. And I had already come up with this exercise. I better practice what I preach. I better go get my journal and work this out. So I sat down and I wrote what the critic was saying. Oh, you're an author. You can't write. Yeah. No, you're wasting your time. No publisher's ever going to publish this. That's a standard writer's block. I've worked with so many writers in Hollywood when I lived in LA, and since then. That is a standard boilerplate critics dialogue. Yeah, nobody wants this. You're wasting your time. Don't do it. You're just going to get rejected. Don't do it. So I sat down and I put the pen in my other hand and I let my inner brat come out. And I said, I'm going to do it anyway, in spite of you. I am doing it. I'm showing up at the typewriter every day. You know, I'm not distracting myself with other things. I'm doing it. So shut up. Get out of here. You're wasting your time. I broke through that block with that 2-page dialogue. And I've got it in my book, The Creative Journal. I have it in my book, The Power of Your Other Hand. I want people to see what I did to break through my blocks. And I always say, you wouldn't have this book in your hand if I didn't use that exercise, because I was just as blocked as anybody. I was paralyzed. I couldn't write. I knew what I wanted to write about. I had the goods. I'd been teaching the method. My students were bugging me to write a book about it, but that critic came in. So you can always be guaranteed, if you're going to grow and push the envelope, you're going to have to face up to the demons of the inner critic. It's part of the creative process. So just know that it's there, be ready for it, and have some tools. And that's what I've done. I've created these tools.
I love that you shared that, because I think one of the biggest things is we develop fear after we've been conditioned by our inner critic. So for me, it's like, it's always, you're not going to be good enough and you're never going to be good enough no matter what you do. And so that the fear that stems from that is just debilitating. It's like, I don't want to do anything because I've already convinced myself that I wouldn't be able to do it.
Right.
And so when you say like, you have to face the inner critic, and I've done a lot of inner work in regards to this, where I would tell myself like, what part of that is a lie, right? Sometimes I'll say, I won't be able to be friends with this person because I'm not good enough for them. And then you tell yourself like, what part of that is a lie?
Thing is a lie. Everything the critic says is a lie. And if you analyze it word for word, it is a lie. Okay, you're no author. you can't write. That wasn't true. I got all A's in English. My teachers told me I should become a writer. My father wanted me to be a screenwriter and would have gotten me into the Screenwriters Guild because he was a film editor. But I chose to go into art because that's what I loved the most at the time. And I eventually authored all these books, and I gave my dad the first book I published and said, you were right. But I didn't have anything to write about when I was 17 years old, deciding what I was going to major in college. Now I do. And by this time, I was, 40 years old, right? I had a lot to write about, and I have continued writing. But I knew at 17, when I had to decide which major I was going to be in college, that, and I told him, I mean, in a way, I could have written the Flying Nun because I went to school to these wild nuns, and I could have written that, but I didn't have the forethought to do that. But, I followed my heart, and I'm glad I did. I've always followed my heart, but I've always had to deal with obstacles, mostly inner obstacles of criticism. Now, what I'm seeing in young women today breaks my heart. We went through this with the women's movement. Women came into the 80s with the mantra, I want it all. Okay. Oh, that's nice. But the thing is, we're living in a human body. Okay. And you can't have it all at once. I'm sorry. You can't. If you want to have children and you want to spend some time with your children and you want to be in a relationship and have time with that relationship, you cannot operate as if you are a single male who is totally career driven. You can't do that. It's not going to work. So a lot of women are pushing themselves into this male model of obsessive career accomplishment and trying to do all the things they want to do as women as well. And it does not work. It leads to depression. It leads to physical burnout like I had. I was a single mother when all this went down in 1973. And I was doing exactly what I'm telling you these young women are doing now. So I know where that road leads. It leads to possible death. It can lead to very serious illness, chronic illness, acute illness. It can lead to a lot of bad stuff. So this whole, it's driven by this critic inside that says you're not enough and you'll never be enough. And so what do? We buy into it and we keep trying to be enough. No. We've got to find out where that mantra is coming from, and we've got to just shoot through it. We've got to not, what we're dealing with in our culture right now is a rebellion against the patriarchal system that breeds that you're not enough. You're never going to be good enough. It comes from the inner critic, the inner perfectionist, and the inner pusher. Those are three archetypes that we all carry in our psyche, because we have all these subpersonalities. And those three are a killer. They get together and they are monstrous. They can kill you. They'll lead to depression and suicide. I've worked with suicidal patients. I know where they're coming from when they're going to commit suicide is usually you are so worthless that you don't deserve to be on the planet and you ought to do yourself in. That's what they hear. That's what they tell me. And I wanted to commit suicide when my marriage ended, and I know that voice. And if it hadn't been for 2 children in the other room, I probably would have done it. Okay? But I was a mother first, and I had to stay alive for them.
Exactly. And thank you so much for being vulnerable with us in that aspect, because I think many of us who are struggling to kind of, and for me, it was like fitting an expectation. And yeah, like at one point I did think about taking my own life too, because it's just because there were no, like, I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I said, oh, it's just easier to stop it right now. And that's incredibly false, because what happens if you stop right now? There's no space for creation. There's no space for growth. There's no space for, and part of why I'm doing this summit is to show other people, like, you should put yourself first before taking care of other people. And for so long, I've been taking care of other people that I repressed my own creativity. And that did lead to like mental illness and all these debilitating fears that held me back. So when I say like empower, find the power within you, it's saying find you first. And you can do that in so many ways, one of which is self-expression through the arts, like you've just told us, using figuring out what the child originally wanted. Because what I originally wanted was, like, I had huge dreams. Like, I wanted to change the world. I wanted to be that superhero that was standing alongside my sisters or alongside other women, and doing all these big things. But then as I grew up, and I was being told, like, oh no, you can't do that. And so I started to believe it. I started to believe that I can't really do it. I just shut down, and I was living a very mundane life, and that caused a lot of the mental problems that I had today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think the work that you do is so important. And I know you work with older adults, but now more than ever, the younger generation is experiencing this. You know, I'm 25 and I experienced this when I was in my early 20s.
Sure.
And it was the comparison to other people saying, oh, you know, I can't be her, or I can't do that.
Yeah.
Um,
And you can imagine what teenagers are going through right now. I did a pilot program in our local high school a couple of years ago, and I know what they're dealing with online. The critic archetype is run rampant. It's destroying our country. It's the archetype in all of us. It's come out and it's destroying our country. And we need to bring a protective parent in, and we need to bring a nurturing parent that has compassion. And the protective parent has to be very no nonsense and say no to this insanity of this critic running things. It's the critic, the pusher, do more, and it's never going to be enough anyway. And the perfectionist is always going to find mistakes. So you cannot win with those three monsters breathing down your neck. You cannot. That's why I've used these techniques for bringing that voice out in the conscious light of day. Put it on paper. What does it say? Now answer back to it. Do not put up with that. And then do the truth telling. I mean, as I said, put it on the stand in a court of law and say, wait a minute, what did you just say? What do you mean I'm no writer? I'm no author. I can't write. That's nonsense. And I've got all the proof that that's nonsense. Now, what was the next thing you had to say? Oh, no publisher ever going to publish this? Well, I haven't written it yet, but when I do, and it's interesting, I found a publisher right away. I went to visit a friend who had written a book about Anais Nin. He'd made a film about her. And I said, who's your publisher? I'm dedicating this book to her, because I was reading her diary. And then that inspired me to turn my art sketchbooks into a journal. And I, here's my sample chapters. He got on the phone, called Swallow Press, and they said, oh yeah, we're interested. Tell her to send it. And they said yes right away. It took a little longer to get it published because of some financial problems they were having. But I mean, the critic was wrong. If I had listened to it, that no publisher is ever going to publish this, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. I would have bought it as reality. This is the whole thing that we have to work with in our culture, but as individuals, is like all of the belief systems about especially what women can and cannot do out there. And because I was a pioneer in the women's movement, I have a very, very personal stake in this. And I want to, when I hear young women putting themselves down, I just want to take them all and give them a big hug and say, you don't have to do this. You don't have to put up with this. Don't buy it. Don't buy the fiction that you're incapable and that you can't have your dreams come true. You can, but don't turn the dreams coming true again into this obsessive, critical, pushy, overambitious, impossible pathway. Be realistic and human about it, and listen to your inner child. What's your body capable of doing? Because if you listen to your child will tell you along your career path what it wants and how it wants it to unfold. It doesn't want a critic jumping all over it. It doesn't want a pusher driving it to death. It doesn't want that. It wants it to be fun. Simple.
Now, since we're wrapping up, like, can you share some of the things that our audience can start doing today to to kind of break away from that cycle? Like, what are some easy steps that they can start doing right now to break away from that cycle?
One of the easiest steps is, first of all, get a journal and get some crayons and get some wide markers for scribbling and drawing, and even sometimes for writing, and some thinner markers with a point for mostly for writing and then finer drawing. And start out by just scribbling however you feel. Answer the question, how do I feel right now? And answer it with your non-dominant hand scribbling on the paper in your journal, and take as many pages as you want. Now, if the feelings are really bombastic and really strong, get some old newspapers. We're not making art here. Just scribble on paper, scribble on junk mail. I save a lot of my junk mail. All those little flyers from the market and all that, that's paper. I can scribble on it. I'm not making art. I'll use my wide markers if I'm really angry and frustrated. You know, if I'm watching some news and I just get really, really crazed about what's going on in the world, I just go scribble it out. The other thing is to write it out and to let the feelings have words. So once the scribbling has come out, then okay, if that scribble could talk, what would it say? And then use the non-dominant hand to print or write. Again, the non-dominant hand, because it's going to go right into the right brain and right into the emotional centers. It's much more direct. The other thing is dialoguing, is asking questions, like the one I mentioned earlier. Do an outline of the body, color in any areas where there's pain or distress or discomfort, and then ask 4 questions. What are you? And don't think you know what it's going to say it is, you know. Just what are you? How do you feel? And of course, the answer to that could be bodily sensations or emotions. Why do you feel that way? What caused it? And what can I do to help you? And you can use that set of questions with anything, with your car that's not working, with a relationship that's not satisfying or whatever's going on with it. There's conflict. You can dialogue with the other person. I have a whole chapter on that in my book, The Power of the Other Hand. Ask the other person, you know, how they feel, what's going on. Tell them first how you feel about what's going on in the relationship, and then ask them to answer with your non-dominant hand. What's their side of it? And some amazing things come out that intuitively we usually know, yeah, I think that's really true, but that person probably isn't conscious enough to even tell me that. Mm-hmm. But I know that that's really what's going on. Some amazing truths come out with that process. The non-dominant hand is, to me, it's the hallmark of my work. It's the key. It's what's really unique about what I do. There's a lot of art therapists out there. There are a lot of journal therapists out there. That's all happened since I got into the field. But I'm still the pioneer and the master of the non-dominant hand work. I have seen all of the different ramifications and iterations of what it can do. And I just had a graduate heal herself completely from COVID. And I mean no trace of it in her blood tests and no antibodies, as if she never had it. And she was in the hospital with it. And she did this. I have a blog at my blog, thepoweroftheotherhand.blogspot.com. She's telling her story, Mary Lou Gonzalez, in the Rio Grande Valley, in a hard-hit area, Latinx population, lots of poverty, multi-generation families living together, tremendous number of cases in that whole area from Brownsville west. I know the area well. I taught there for years. She's one of my graduates of my training. And she used the method. She did the journaling. She told COVID to get out in no uncertain terms. And not only did it get out, but it got completely out because she doesn't even have antibodies. And the doctor was like, what have you been doing? There's no, I mean, it's like it never happened. We know you had it. It was in your test. You had all the symptoms. You were in the hospital on oxygen. And there's no trace of COVID in your lab test. What are you doing? And she said, I'm doing journaling. I'm answering back to my critic. I told COVID to get out. I stand up and say it out loud. I'm doing dramatic enactments. She's also praying. She's doing some Deepak Chopra meditations. She's doing all of this kind of work, and she has kicked it out of her system. And
that's fantastic.
And I tell you, I mean, In a way, I wasn't surprised because I've seen cancer completely turn around. And of course, I saved my life. And I want to close by saying what I had when I was ill in 73 was correctly diagnosed by an expert and pioneer in the field of sclerology. It's like iridology. He read my eyes in 1980. This is several years after I healed myself. And he knew nothing about me. He looked at the soles of my feet and he looked at my eyes and he said to me, okay, you had pneumonia when you were 9, you had this when you were 17. He read me my whole history of my health. And I said, are you psychic? No, no, I'm reading your eyes. Okay, you're reading my eyes. And he said, and what happened when you were 35? Did you come unglued? And he had this like Cheshire cat grin. And I looked at him, I said, that's exactly what happened. What do you know? What did I never knew what I had. He said, I know you didn't know what you had. He said, you had a collagen disease. Collagen is the glue that holds everything together. And yours was coming apart. So that's why I said, did you come unglued? I said, yeah, my whole life came unglued over a period of 5 years. He says, yeah, I'm not surprised. He said, but it's incurable. So I want to know, what did you do? And I said, I threw all my medicines away. I told him the story. And I said, I discovered my life's work by doing journaling, drawing, and writing. He said, very smart. He said, that saved your life. He said, if you had continued taking medications, your immune system would have been completely wiped out because this is an autoimmune disease. And it's like lupus. It's in the family of lupus. And you would have died. And he said, so that saved your life. I said, yep, I know. I've been telling people that for years, but now I know what I had. He said, yeah, you came unglued. That's what's going on in your body. That was going on in your life. And you put yourself back together again. You glued yourself back together. And I teach collage. I mean, it's no accident that one of the main bodies of my work has involved collage and gluing magazine photographs together into a new map of what you want to create so that you can glue your life back together after it's come apart or after you didn't follow your dream. You know, it's no accident, not at all.
That's so funny. And that's incredible. Just your story is incredible. And the work that you do actually works. And, you know, the same with me with art in general, it has kept me disease free and sick free. Like I hate going to the doctor. So I have not been to the doctors in a very long time. And I'm very grateful for that. But like you've said, it's a way to heal. And a lot of that comes from mental illness.
And it works for all ages. I mean, we've done research in schools, especially in that Rio Grande Valley area in South Texas on the border, around McAllen, and that's that area. And in one of the school districts, we found where we did Creative Journal in the classroom, because I have books for children and for teenagers. And we did one semester, and the children's grades went way up. They got 6 academic distinctions in that school based on standard testing. Behavior problems almost disappeared. This is K through 6. And the children were doing journaling in the classroom, no grades. They were given journal prompts and they do it. So they get all this emotional stuff out. But the most important thing to me, besides the good grades and all that, was that on testing day, there were no children in the nurse's office throwing up, having diarrhea, and literally having symptoms of stress. Every other school in the district, yeah, standard stress symptoms in the nurse's office. In our one pilot school, none of that on testing day. And that was because they had been journaling their anxiety about the test for days before they took the test. So the emotional stuff was handled. They went in, took the test, and then got these 6 distinctions on academic terms based on those test results.
That's
fantastic.
fantastic.
These are Latinx children who are in schools where they're not expected to perform. A lot of them don't speak English when they come to school. Their families don't speak English. They have a lot going against them. But these kids did incredibly well because they were given emotional tools for emotional literacy. And that's what we're teaching, emotional literacy.
That's fantastic. And thank you so much for sharing. Now, I know we're coming to an end. I know you have a special offer for the audience. Would you like to share what that is?
Yes, if they go to my website, luciac.com, luciac.com, they will find a page for a gift. And I think you're probably going to provide a link as well. And the first 5 people who get to that link will be sent an ebook, and that is the Inner Child Playbook. And it is based on my bestseller, Recovery of Your Inner Child. And it's all of the journal prompts that are in that book in a format that can be printed out and create your own workbook. It's got a lot of blank pages to work on, and they can go through the whole process of self-reparenting and then discovering the playful child, the creative child, and the spiritual child. You get all the stuff that's in the way of that, and that's where they get at the end of this program. So they can do this work on their own.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Lucia, for being on here and sharing your wisdom with us. And is there anything else that you'd like to leave the audience with before we end?
I would like to remind people that they have the truth inside. And if they're willing to use tools to find that truth, their lives will be completely transformed. No matter what pain they're going through right now, physical, emotional, mental, whatever it is, they can find that truth inside. I've seen it over and over, and I'm a living example of it. So I want them to believe that and really know that.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. I cannot wait to see you guys on the next episode. Thank you again, Lucia, for being here, and have a wonderful time. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.